Welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with CPA and personal financial specialist, Phil Putney. Now let's get rolling with today's show. This week on Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts, Phil, let's do a kind of a case study breakdown, if you will, a little bit, kind of retiring on accident. So I've got this little story we've got here from a person, we'll call them Fran, for keeping things simple. It's a little bit different, but I wanted to kind of go through the segments of what happened with this case study, this person, and let you kind of break down a little bit and some things that you would like to have seen done, or maybe have, things like that, right? Some ways to look at it. Because a lot of people, I think, are going to be very much like Fran here, right? Where it's you retire sort of on accident, right? Like
not your own decision.
Right. You kind of didn't really plan much. You had a few things in place, an assortment of stuff that we all kind of collect. Mm-hmm. But then just life's, and you wind up, finding yourself in this situation. So we'll go through that this week and let you kind of give some insight. I think this will be really useful for people who, check out the show and the podcast and think this could be me easily, right? Or this might be me, or I'm walking into this and I don't even know it, kind of thing. So let's get into it a little bit. You doing all right this week?
Doing good.
Yeah. All right. So it's upon us.
Spring, whatever. It's here. So
it's something, because the weather still can't make up its mind. But anyway, let's talk about Fran. All right. So who is Fran? So here's the story. I'll set it up a little bit. So Fran is a 62-year-old female, single, spent 30 years teaching in the public school system before she decided she needed to change. 5 years ago, she moved south, rented a home, picked up a full-time administration job. Although it wasn't the dream job, it paid the bills and just kind of gave her time to settle in. So she did the snowbird thing, right? Went down to Florida. So walking into a situation like that, just hearing this first piece of the setup, what kind of stands out to you? What's some things that your planner brain is starting to think about when you hear some of those details? So again, 62, single, 5 years ago, moved down south, does not own a home, is renting, and worked in the public school system for 30 years.
Well, so she's got a 30-year history in public school, so hopefully she's been able to save. Hopefully has a pension. Probably
we'll get to that.
A lot of pensions do, or school teachers do.
Right.
So she should have a little bit of a base there. So it's the surface. I mean, it doesn't sound like it would be a bad thing. I've got a lot of clients that'll have that late stage career change of, hey, I'm done. I've been, in teaching, whatever it is, that main career for this many years. I'm just burned out. Yeah. Maybe they're not ready to fully retire, but they're looking for a change, right? So finding something different, just something you're not going to retire yet, but it's not the stress of that long-term career you've had.
Gotcha.
To me, the key though with all of those is hopefully you've run the numbers ahead of time to figure out, does this work? And just, one day say, you know what, you got totally burned out and just threw the towel in and made this rash decision. So,
and I should have clarified. So this is actually a real person's story. We're just changing the name. They did that. So they're just now, as we're going through this in a few chapters here, they finally sat down with an advisor after all these things have happened.
Okay. So this is one of those, I did something.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of like giving you a little staging setup here, right? So this is where it turns just a little bit, right? So she retired from the teaching job, took the admin job, I think, to cover the cost of living.
Okay.
The turning point, chapter 2 here, is that job restructured. So
So
right.
Now she was forced into a more full-time retirement.
Yes, new role, longer hours, not better pay. Decided that wasn't going to work for her, right? So so she decided that wasn't going to work. So she walked away, basically, into retirement, right?
Yeah. So hopefully, if she's now walking in the door, so she's seeking advice. That's a good thing versus just panicking. A lot of times people, they get in that scenario. It's like, okay, I no longer have a monthly paycheck coming in. What do I do? And they'll start making rash decisions, like maybe filing for Social Security too early, locking herself in, and now she's in trouble. And maybe that wasn't the right decision. So.
Well, all right. So let me go ahead and give you that. So the next stage is that's what she did, right? So it's not like you've seen this before, this kinds of scenarios. So she decided to turn on Social Security. She went ahead and turned it on because she's 62. Yep. And she also picked up a small part-time gig, right? Just for a little bit of extra money. I think it's at a gymnasium or something like that. Nothing too demanding, just a little extra scratch, right? Coming
Yep.
So now basically she's got $14.50 a month from Social Security and about $800 from the part-time job. So what, $22.50 a month?
23, yep.
But her rent alone is $1,600, right?
Yeah.
So if there's $2,200 coming in from Social Security and the part-time job, basically all of that is going to living expenses.
Right.
Right. So now
you're not doing anything.
You're not doing anything. You're not
eating probably at that point.
Right, exactly. So now you do have to start looking at the things she hasn't touched yet.
Right.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about that piece of it, because she's come to you as an advisor and said, all right, here's what I got. The $2,200 is barely making me survive. I've got a pension. I'll go ahead and give you the pension details as well, Phil. It's about $1,100 a month, but it's not available fully vested, I guess, till 65. So it'll be $1,100 a month at 65. So she's still got 3 more years on that. Yeah. But she also has $210,000 in the 403B that she hasn't touched, right? No life insurance, no long-term care.
Okay. So, I mean, in her scenario, life insurance really isn't an issue. Life insurance is typically to insure the loss of your income or assets if something happens to you. Well, she doesn't have a spouse to take care of. So, I mean, it's not like there's a need for that. Long-term care, I mean, that could be a concern, but that to me, so like any insurance, right? Is there a need? Could it be useful? Absolutely. But you got to live first. I mean, you've got to make sure you can actually afford just basic retirement before you even start to look at that. So, I mean, in her case, you've got to really run the math again to see long-term. I mean, so she's renting. I mean, is that her long-term plan? And if so, build that into what the costs are going to be there. Start to look at the pensions 3 years out. Does she have an early option on that? What's the cost to do that?
Usually that's going to be
the
reduction, right?
Yeah, it'll be similar to Social Security, but sometimes that penalty for filing early isn't as much. From healthcare, we talked a little on that. I would hope, since she has retired from the school district, a lot of times then you would have available retiree healthcare. So for her, healthcare, I'm assuming isn't as big of a concern from a cost standpoint. So, I mean, that definitely can help. You're going to have to start to run the math to see, maybe, so if she has just filed for Social Security, she has a year that she can actually resend that application, so she can basically, she'd have to pay the money back, but she could kind of restart the clock. So that might be a consideration. Again, running the math out, but that means that she would have to start spending on that retirement account, the 403B. And I mean, that's only, a couple $100,000. So, to me, the place to start to really get a better picture is build out that kind of full budget. What is it that you need if you were going to live comfortably, not lavishly for sure, her scenario. But I mean, 16 is that's rent. You got to build onto that all the other expenses I'm sure she's got a car and insurance there and insurance on the apartment and, basic living expenses, clothing and utilities and everything else. What is that number? And that's where you really have to start before you can start putting all these pieces together to kind of backfill to say, okay, well, I need $3,000 a month, let's say, to cover all those items. I have 14 coming in from Social Security if I keep it, so now I'm 1,600 short. Well, where do I get that? Well, she's getting 8 from a job, so really now she's 8 short. So that's really kind of the approach I would say you have to start with. To me, she's missing that. And this is common, right? A lot of times people don't think of it that way. They think of, well, here's what I have. What can I get? And to me, that's kind of the backwards way of thinking of it. Let's start first with, well, what do you need? What is your vision? How much do you need a month? And don't underestimate, because that's the long-term plan concern, right? If you say, well, I only need 3, and you run the math out and we figure that out, but as now you get there, it's 4 or 5, well, that's a whole different scenario. So likely for her, it's probably going to be a situation that maybe she turns off Social Security to let that grow. It's just her, so she doesn't have anyone else to rely on. So if she can grow her Social Security to at least full retirement age, along with that pension, maybe over the next 3 years, waiting for the pension, get something beyond just the small gym job, to get something that's a little bit more substantial, and granted, I know she was thrown into this scenario. Maybe that's not absolutely what she wants to do, but that's the job of an advisor shouldn't be to, tickle the client's ear and tell them what they think they want to hear. At least that's not my approach. I'm a friends with lots of my clients, but my job first is not to be a friend. It's to be an advisor and tell you the facts, right? I mean, this is the reality. If at the end of the day you need $3,000, $4,000, whatever that number is, here's how the numbers lay out. And if you, based on your scenario, spending on that retirement account might not make it, all the way through for retirement, whatever life expectancy is. So you really have to look at that long-term plan.
So, that's how you would start doing. You'd start kind of stress testing her data and saying, okay, look, the 2,200 that you're making is clearly not doing much more than surviving. So how much more do we need to be pulling from, the 403B in order to, plus the pension or possibly the reduced pension if she turned it on early, right? Let's just say it's a couple $100 less. Does that get you where you need to be? And then how much do we start pulling from that 210,000 to fill in that gap?
Right. Well, and to me, the piece that's missing is, well, what does it cost her? I mean, what we know is she's making 2,200.
Okay. Right.
And it sounds like she's making it, but
just barely. But yeah, to your point, there's not a lot of frills.
The advisor skeptic in me says she's not making it. There's things going on credit card. There has to be.
Okay. All right.
Because there's no way somebody making 2,200 a month gross, is paying $1,600
in Florida.
Rent in Florida, and you've got $600 a month to pay your gas in the car, your insurance, your groceries, your other living expenses, clothing,
Yeah, there's no way. Yeah.
You just can't. That's not going to happen. So
let's just say another 1,000. Well, let's just say another 1,000 from the pension gets turned on. Let's just make it easy math. Right now you're at 3,200. Yeah.
So now we're getting closer, maybe into that ballpark of survival type retirement. Right.
Right.
You at least have enough to live the basics.
Yeah. So that 210 maybe becomes a couple items that you wanted to check off, but even that's not a ton really to think about.
You start to spend
20 years,
4 or 5% of that a year. So you're it's not going to last long.
The Tax Smart Retiree is your comprehensive guide to mastering tax efficiency for a flourishing retirement. You will find indispensable advice and actionable strategies designed to enhance tax savings, maximize Social Security benefits, protect against market volatility, and develop a customized retirement plan. To get your free ebook, click the link in the show notes of today's episode and download your copy of the Tax Smart Retiree right now.
So I guess, where does somebody like this go is the final piece, right? So you kind of say, look, if you had planned a little ahead of time, how much could you have staved this off? And I get that life sometimes just throws things in our path, but I mean, look, she's handled it on her own. She's made decisions. She's got her head above water, maybe just barely, but I don't think that's the retirement people are looking for. They're hoping for something more, right?
Right.
And that takes planning.
And that was my point, is that, I mean, this is where she got kind of forced into, and she's made some decisions where she's at. Okay, that's fine. You're where you're at. Let's step back and not figure out, how do I just survive? I mean, unless that's your vision, you just want to survive, but what does retirement really look like? What is it that you would need to live comfortably, right? Let's start there, and then start to look at these different pieces. And it sounds like she's not too far in where maybe we can make some changes if it makes sense, so it might make sense to make some changes like on Social Security, Ultimately, it might end up being that, hey, she's going to have to get something a little bit more substantial for work to help fill that gap for at least a period of time. So, and the biggest concern in these type of scenarios is you have to look beyond today. You can't just look at, this is where I'm at today, so I'm going to have to do what I have to do. And, I turn Social Security on. I mean, that's very common, the first thing that happens, pension, maybe, or, it might not be that big of a decrease to take it early. Again, it's about break even and kind of running the math to see what that looks like. But if you're going to take a, $200, $300, $400 a month hit to take it early, it's probably not worth it. You're making decisions today that are just to get by, and long term, it's going to put you in a really bad scenario.
And probably what was in her mind was the administrative job was probably paying quite a bit better than the part-time
so it sounds like
gig.
She was probably living on that administrative job.
Waiting to 65 for the full pension. Right, exactly. And so, life and things got in the way. So, and this is the point of getting a strategy put together, whether you're single, whether you're married, when you're 50, 55, for sure, you need to start considering talking to somebody, right? 55, 57.
Many clients in these type of scenarios, especially as we went through that COVID timeframe, or we had done the planning already, they had a plan that they were retiring in 3, 5, 10 years down the road. And we had run the math on that and kind of figured it out. Well, then this happened, right? All of a sudden the job changed. They got let go. There was downsizing. Well, fortunately, we had already done all the legwork, so we could quickly pivot and see, okay, well, here's the new scenario. Can you just retire? I mean, clearly for somebody like that, if they had already done the math and planned on working another 3 to 5 years, probably not going to be the same retirement if they retire right then. Just math wouldn't be the same thing. There was a reason they were working another 3 to 5 years. But is it possible? And that's, as an advisor, my goal is never to say this is what you should do. Here's the options. Hey, if you want to just throw the hat in and say, done, I'm retired, this is what it probably is going to look like, right? This is the level of spending you should be at. Is that doable? If not, well, then here's the next option, right? Okay, well, then ultimately, here's what we have to do to get you to that more comfortable level of retirement. And it's probably not maybe what you really wanted to hear, but that's just the reality. And it's better to hear it now than jump in and do all these things, and in 10, 15 years into this version of retirement, you're down to $50,000 in the 403B, and you've made these early decisions on pensions and Social Security, and now you're in real trouble. So that is not a scenario you want to be in.
Well, and the good news is it's not too late usually. I mean, yes, you may not get the results you want, but do something, take some action. If your story feels anything like Fran's or like it's creeping in that direction, take the action now. Have a conversation. Every advisor I know, and I know hundreds of them across the country, offer those complimentary reviews for that reason. See if they're the right fit for you. See if they can help you. See if they can get you some advice that'll maybe get you onto a better path or whatever. So reach out, have a conversation, and just take the action, right? Get started today. So if you need some help, reach out to Phil, 248-888-7530, 248-888-7530, or go to philstaxhacks.com. That's philstaxhacks.com. Links are in the show descriptions below on whether it's Apple, Spotify, of course, right here on YouTube. Phil, that's going to do it for us this week, my friend. Thanks for breaking it down as always.
Take care.
All right, we'll see you next time here on Phil's Tax Hacks and other retirement
investment advisory services offered through AFS Wealth Management. The content of this program is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. Investments and or investment strategies involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will achieve its objectives.